Our next guest is going to share how you can make your San Diego home purchase more affordable. Please welcome the CEO of Global Mortgage, Sean Courtney.
There he is, Mr. Courtney. Thanks for coming in, man. Appreciate your time today.
My pleasure, Derek.
So, big issue out there right now is affordability for people. And so I know that you have some ideas on kind of how to go about thinking about this, looking at it, if you're looking to purchase in San Diego and you're concerned about affordability, some things to think about. So for those people who, especially first-time buyers, who really don't know what they're doing at all, what are some of the things people should consider, before engaging in purchasing a home?
Well, I mean, I almost go back even farther than that. I think one of the big challenges we're seeing right now is with people coming out of school with a ton of student loan debt.
Okay.
Student college is getting more expensive. Kids are having to finance more of that college education. So for young people and for parents of young people, educate your kids on what they're doing when they're taking student loans out and kind of what the consequences of that are. That's a big challenge we're seeing in mortgage financing.
And if you want to go back even further than that, save money for your kids' college.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Because you can go way back on that timeline.
Yeah. Well, it's the planting the tree metaphor, right? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
It's true and hilarious.
Yeah.
All right. So student debts. So what do you think people, so educate about student debts, but then for people who already have them, you're out of college, you got the student debt.
Right.
Should that become a priority?
It should probably just to understand it, mainly to talk to a qualified mortgage person if you are thinking about buying a home or you want to understand your options. To really sit down and look at your credit, look what you have in terms of debt. Obviously, anyone you talk to about finances, the first thing you want to attack is your credit card debt. That's just the balances that have the highest interest rate. They're not tax deductible. It's money you already spent to impress people you don't even like. The Will Smith thing, but. That's priority number one.
Okay, so credit card's priority number one.
I would say that, yeah.
Okay, so credit card debt. And the reason why you're bringing this up is because it's the debts that people have that make the payments unaffordable.
Right, so the number one thing we look at these days when qualifying someone for a mortgage is can they afford the payment. So the way we do that is we look at their overall income, we look at what housing payment we're proposing for them and what their other debt payments are. So a lot of the people who have federal debts, they're able to get in income-based repayment plans and different ways that they can make their student loans more affordable. Again, that's something that you're either in a federal loan or you're not, so it's tough to go back on that one. But if you are considering financing college, look at the federal loan programs because they're the most forgiving down the line.
Oh, that's a good tip. So we're looking at these debts because you're saying, okay, well, if I'm a first-time buyer and I want to buy a house, maybe the first thing I should do is clean up everything else. If I just have my mortgage and I have my other stuff taken care of, then that will make it a lot easier for me to afford a home, obviously. But start with credit card debts. Take a look, I guess, be aware of all of the above, your auto loan, your student loans.
Right.
What's the interest rates? How long are they amortized? What does that all look like?
Right.
Is there a way to restructure it so that you can more easily afford your mortgage?
Well, and understanding credit, I find, is a big gap. There's a big gap there even for people who are more mature. People have a lot of misconceptions about credit, what makes a good credit score. Having student loan debt doesn't necessarily mean you have bad credit. Sometimes people who don't finance anything have bad credit because there's no record for them to go off of when they go to get financing. But just educate yourself. People are coming into it. There's a lot more information available out there that you can go out and find either on the internet or television shows like yours.
Yeah.
You can educate
like
yourself.
Right here.
Yeah, we're getting smarter, right?
Exactly.
So. But also consult a professional. Don't necessarily think because you've got some access to some information that you can go out there and do it yourself, particularly with something like buying a home or even financing your college. Get some help. Talk to people that know what they're doing. Talk to your mentors. Talk to people who are wiser than you. Maybe your parents.
Yeah, people who've gone. Yeah. I don't know. That's a tough sell.
Yeah.
But you should, because if someone's been through this before. You can obviously get good information there. I think people are borrowing too much. The problem with student loans, and that's a big one. I want to touch on that because there are solutions. We do have solutions for that. If you're having trouble with it, let us know. We'll help you, point you in the right direction. But what's happening now is they're giving you student loans for everything. It used to be just you get a student loan for your tuition. Now you get a student loan for your entire expenses. Like, my goodness, you can't work.
Right.
You can't do anything while you're a student.
Right.
So we're going to actually finance your entire lifestyle through college. So people are going through and getting a $40,000 degree, but they have $100,000 in student loans.
Sometimes more.
That's the problem.
Right.
With that whole industry is that they're financing the whole life and not just the college.
Well, and for parents and for students, you're making an investment. You're spending 50, 100, sometimes more over a graduate degree, undergraduate degree, graduate degree. Make sure that you're going to get a return on investment. Make sure you're going to get a marketable skill. Make sure you're going to get something that you can go out and go get a job. Unfortunately, we see a lot of people who come out with an undergraduate degree. It's in a liberal art or something that doesn't necessarily translate directly into a marketable job, but they've got $100,000, $250,000, $200,000 in student debt, as you're talking about. They just, you're a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid with a giant credit card.
Yeah, and that's no bueno.
Right. The results are, now we're starting to impact these millennial buyers because they're coming out with so much student loan debt.
Yeah, so, pay attention to these things ahead of time would be great. But certainly, take a look at what you've got now and see how can we efficiently take care of this. Maybe it makes sense for us to spend a year or two knocking down some debt so that we can buy the house that we'll be able to stay in for a long period of time.
Right.
And we won't have growing pains and won't have to have another transaction. That's one of the things I'm a big proponent of is buying your forever home, your first home, making your first home your forever home, which is tough because for a lot of people say, oh, well, we don't have any kids yet. We want to have 3 kids,
Right.
and then they're all going to go away. And so you may have a couple times in your life that you're cramped if you do that. Like you might have a couple times where it's like, okay, it's a little tight, but it'll all work itself out in the long run. And the less transactions that you have, the more money you save yourself, and the less you have to worry about the market affecting you or causing you a problem. If you buy a house and you're like, this house is ours forever, then you're not going to have anything to worry about. All you have to worry about is making your payment. That's it.
I think that's a good point of view. I think, for me, I'm a real zealot for home ownership. I've just seen it so many times at all different income levels. It's a great vehicle for building wealth. Not in the way a lot of people think, but for working class families, sometimes it's their only asset when they go to retire. They haven't saved anything, and now at least they have a home that's got a decent piece of equity in it. For me, that's not the number one reason. For me, the number one reason is the magic of the 30-year mortgage, right? So that payment, when you buy, it never goes up. Kind of what you're talking about, rents do. We've seen rents go up 10% year over year, depending on what data source you're looking at. So that means at the end of 2010, the same 2-bedroom, the average in San Diego County was about $1,300 for rent. Now that same apartment is $2,200. So when you buy, you freeze your housing payment. And to me, that's the real power of home ownership, is that protection from rent inflation.
Totally agree. In fact, I wrote an article for the San Diego Union-Tribune when I was the director of real estate there called Buying a Home is Not an Investment, It's a Hedge.
Right.
Which is technically what you're doing. You're
right.
hedging, you're saying, okay, I want to get this payment, and I'm locking that in. And if that's higher or lower than where the rents are today, I don't care because I want to have that payment for the next 30 years. I know I can afford it. I like this house. And then it's yours.
Right.
And then you don't have a payment anymore.
Well, you get all the other stuff, all the stuff that they sell you first, the appreciation, the equity, the forced savings. But really, for me, I agree with you. It's that hedge, it's that freeze of your housing payment. Everything else is going to go up. Hopefully your salary too, hopefully your income. But if you can lock that housing payment, and that's for most people their biggest outbound expense every month.
Totally agree. So there's a lot to consider here, but especially for first-time buyers or anyone who is going to buy a home in the next year or two, even if you're thinking, it's too early to look at that, it's a little bit down the road, great time to plan.
It's never too early.
Great time to plan. If you're like, we want to buy, but it's a couple years off, great time for you to sit down and go, well, what do we have?
Right.
Do we have a credit issue we need to fix?
Right.
You have time to fix it now in case you do.
Because that can take you 6 to 12 months sometimes.
And if you wait until you're ready to buy, that could be a big problem. So having time to plan is great. If you're 6 months, 12 months, 24 months out, getting a plan together is a really smart thing to do. And of course, we have no idea what's going to happen with interest rates. There's no way to predict that.
They're going to go up or they're going to go down.
One of the two. Or stay the same.
Option 3.
Those are the 3 options. So we do know this. If you have credit card debt is bad, okay? And we also know that student loan debt is not going to go away. So those are things that, to really take a hard look at as well. And if you can pay off debts, that can be more advantageous to you. This sounds weird, but mathematically it can be more advantageous to you when purchasing a home than saving for your down payment. Because down payment options are so low,
Right.
you know, you don't need to have that much saved. That extra money could be used better to pay off your debts, reduce your monthly obligations, make that payment more affordable.
Well, particularly in a town where we have so much active duty and former military, a lot of people have the VA home loan option available to them. To me, that is one of the greatest things we do for our service people. It's a great benefit. It allows veterans and active duty to buy with no money down and get themselves into the housing market and take care of their family in that manner.
Totally agree. Great stuff, Sean. Courtney, thank you so much for coming in today. Really
My pleasure,
appreciate your
Derek.
time. Stick around for more Smarter San Diego TV, where we guarantee to make you smarter than everyone else, commercial free.